Welcome to the first part of a 7-part series where I make a manga to movie comparison of A Silent Voice. If you haven't watched this movie or read the manga, I highly recommend that you stop the video right now and go watch or read it. If you're like most people who are clicking on this video, you've probably only ever watched the movie, but you want to learn more about the manga. If this is true, please go buy the manga before watching this to support the creator. This series deserves it. Before I begin the review, I want to let everyone know that this movie did an absolute perfect job of adapting 62 chapters of content into a 1 hour and 45 minute runtime and only cutting out things that are not necessarily needed. If you clicked on this video wanting someone to bash the movie for not being a frame-by-frame copy of the manga, go ahead and lower your expectations because I have nothing but positive things to say about how this manga was adapted into a movie. So essentially, the review is just going to be extra content that the manga provides, along with entire missing plot lines that are in the manga but not the movie. One last thing to note before we start the review is for anyone who hasn't read a manga, you read them kind of backwards. So you read them from right to left. So the panels go from the top to the left, and then you go down a row to the left, and then to the very bottom row. And it depends on the paneling. Sometimes there's more than 3 rows, sometimes there's less, sometimes there's just a whole page of an image, but in essence it's just reverse from American reading. The movie starts with our 17-year-old main character Shoya Ishida selling all of his personal possessions for what we don't realize yet is a debt that he owes his mother because of the bullying he did to a character named Shoko Nishimiya. After Shoya sells his possessions and returns the money to his mother, he goes to a bridge where he is contemplating on making a final end. The movie transitions into the intro where it gives some manga references that we'll get into here in a little bit. The manga starts with Shoya in a building where Shoko's sign language classes are being taught, and he finds her right away. At this point in the manga, we have no clue who these characters are or what they have done. Shoko runs away immediately after seeing Shoya, which he then starts running after her. Then, it flashes back 6 years prior, when Shoya was 11 years old. Shoya is teasing Keisuke into participating in their 41-day streak of doing daredevil stunts. He convinces his friends to jump off the bridge and into the river. This does end up hurting them, but so far it seems all in good fun, just boys being boys. Afterwards, they go to Shoya's house, which is also his mom's hair salon, Hair Make Ishida. It seems that Shoya makes quite a mess for his mother to clean up after these daredevil stunts. Shoya's mother tries to express her displeasure in his stunts, but he just blows her off, calling her an old hag and to drop dead. Miss Ishida doesn't seem to be fazed by the name calling and just lets it go. Shoya and his friends go upstairs to play video games. This is where we meet Shoya's sister, or at least her lower half. We also meet her boyfriend at the time, Genki, who seems to be a bit of a dirtbag. Shoya explains that this is his sister's 30th boyfriend. This leads us to learn of Shoya's battle against boredom. This is the first piece of character motivation that we learn about Shoya. He is in a desperate battle against boredom in his younger years. We transition to Shoya's school, where we learn days in advance that his class will be getting a new student. Shoya voices his displeasure in the prospect that this transfer student may be a girl. He thinks girls are boring and therefore you cannot play with them. After school, Shoya and his friends Keisuke and Kazuki are about to start the 42nd day of daredevil stunts when Kazuki tells them he has some extra classes he is taking and wants to get out of the stunts. Shoya is able to convince them to come back after they find a nutria. I had to actually look up this animal. It is like a beaver rat type animal. I have never seen it before. It must be like native to Japan or something. After catching the animal, Shoya realizes his shoes have been stolen. He comes back to the house desperate to find his shoes, where we are introduced to a new character named Naoka Ueno. Naoka leaves after hassling Shoya some more, and this is actually the first time that we see 11-year-old Shoko in the background, sitting in the salon trying to pick out a hairstyle. We can see she is wet and has a leaf in her hair. Shoya tries to welcome her into the salon, but gets no response, so he just assumes a weird Martian has come into the store. Days later, we figure out a boy from Kazuki's second school has Shoya's shoes. They devise a plan to get him back. They get Naoka to go and lure the slightly older boy away from the school where Shoya, Kazuki, and Keisuke are waiting for him. Shoya threatens the boy to get him his shoes back, which he just offers to return the shoes. Shoya is offended by the offer and punches the boy in the face. They return triumphant when they run into Genki. Genki surprises Shoya with a punch to the stomach and knocking him off his feet. It turns out the boy that stole Shoya's shoes was Genki's little brother. Shoya gets home relatively unfazed by the sucker punch, claiming it's just another victory against boredom. Shortly after, we are introduced to Pedro, who's a buff Brazilian man who is now dating his sister. We transition into the next day at Shoya's school, and everyone is getting a new seat to accommodate for the new student. We get a quick glimpse of Naoka switching seats with Miyoko Sahara so she can sit with Shoya. After school, Kazuki announces he can't skip any more school, and Keisuke also decides that he is done with the daredevil stunts as well. Shoya is left alone playing video games at his house. Shoya starts to fear that he will lose the battle to boredom. After that scene, the movie and the manga meet up for the first time. The new student is a girl named Shoko Nishimiya.
Okay, class. This is Shoko. Would you like to introduce yourself?
This scene is pretty much shot for shot with the manga, but they replaced this one panel with a clip of him beating a video game once he learns Shoko is deaf.
Holy crap!
Personally, I prefer the really neat space scene. I feel it better represents Shoya's thoughts that this is a strange girl to him. In the manga, he actually says out loud to the class, "What a weirdo," which I think in any culture is inappropriate behavior. In the manga, Shoko says hello to everyone in her row of seats, including Shoya. This is the first time that they make eye-to-eye contact. Shoya also seems nervous, as if he doesn't know what to say to this new girl. In the manga, we get a side story of when Shoko was in the salon picking out a hairstyle. Miss Ishida calls for her but gets no response. She gets her attention and gets ready to cut her hair. She notices it is wet and dirty. She just assumes all young kids jump into the river after school like her son. Shoko picks out a lovely hairstyle when her mom comes to the store, Yaoka Nishimiya. She demands Miss Ishida cuts Shoko's hair very short, similar to a boy's. Miss Ishida tries to ask Shoko if the short length is okay. She then learns that Shoko is deaf. Miss Nishimiya explains that she wants Shoko to be tough like a boy. Shoko shows her discomfort as to not wanting to look like a boy, so Miss Ishida cuts her hair the way Shoko wants it to look. Miss Nishimiya becomes very frustrated with Miss Ishida and explains that she is surprised she's still in business when she disregards her customers' wishes. Shoko is dragged away by her mother, but she looks back at Miss Ishida with a look of gratitude on her face. These are some of the few scenes that we see of Shoko's mom that really shows that she wasn't the best mom and did not necessarily make the best decisions when trying to raise Shoko. The next panel is Nishimiya's class introduction, and Shoya is immediately interested in Shoko's inability to hear. He wraps up his notebook and yells behind her to test her hearing. Everyone is offended but Shoko because, of course, she can't hear his disturbance. After class, everyone gives Shoya grief for teasing Shoko about her hearing disability. He tries to make it a game to see how well she can hear. Shoya's teacher scolds him for the first time after this class. A small scene that I feel is important is in class one day, the teacher asks Shoko if she knows the answer to a question. Miki has to then write the question down for Shoko to read, then Shoko can write down her answer, and then the answer turns out to be correct. The teacher asks the class to praise her for the correct answer. This is the one and only time that the teacher is actually a good teacher and accommodates Shoko's disability. It's all downhill from here. This is by far one of the worst teachers that I have seen in fiction. You may understand why I feel this later. Soon after this, the movie and the book meet back up. During class, Miki asks Shoko if she knows Japanese, but Shoko can't hear her, so she just asks if she could write down what she said. Naoka, uncomfortable with repeating herself, doesn't reply. Instead, Miki asks what her nickname is. Shoko lets everyone know that her nickname is Sho, which is similar to Shoya's nickname, Shosho. Kazuki teases Shoya that him and her have the same nickname. This bothers Shoya. During this class, Shoya decides Shoko's arrival is a gift from God to help him fight his battle against boredom. The manga goes into a scene where Shoko begins to read out loud during class.
Who's next?
Four Eyes.
Shoko.
Start reading from here.
There was an awkward silence. His mother looked at him and waited. She shook her head and said, "You need to stop being so stubborn all the time. He had no intention of apologizing."
That's good. Shoya, you're next.
But the movie goes into her singing in choir.
Not yet, Shoko.
These two clips are exactly the same in the manga and in the movie. They are just swapped in the order in which they happen. In the manga, after Shoya makes fun of Shoko for reading out loud during class, Shoko gets scolded by the teacher for the second time. In this talk, his teacher discusses morality and says some things in life you just have to deal with. After this talk, Shoya begins to see a lot of new things that everyone in the class just has to deal with now that they have a disabled student in their class. Most of this revolves around Shoko needing extra time to write things down for people to understand, or needing to have to ask people to write something down for her. We then see a scene where Shoya tells Shoko, "At this rate, everyone will be fed up with you," and poor Shoko doesn't understand what he's saying, so she asks him to write it down. After this scene, we get to the choir scene I mentioned earlier that is in the movie, but the order is just swapped in sequence. In the manga, after the choir scene, Shoya writes in Shoko's notebook that she is tone deaf and just needs to pretend to sing. Shortly after this, they have an outside activity. The teacher recalls everyone back to class, but no one actually informs Shoko, who couldn't hear the teacher. At this point, we are only about 8 minutes into the movie, and several things are out of order before we are hit with an anime-only scene. After Shoko reads out loud in class and is made fun of by Shoya, it goes to a scene on the playground where Shoko is trying to hang out with the other girls. They all decide to leave and she's just left alone.
Yeah, let's go. We're leaving, Shoko.
You know something? We're all sick of you and your notebook. It's getting pretty old, pretty fast. What do you want?
Can we be friends?
What? You're such a freak!
After this scene, the manga and the movie meet back up, where a teacher named Miss Kita introduces the idea that they should spend their homeroom period learning sign language to help everyone understand Shoko more. Naoka stands up and tells the teacher that it is easier for everyone just to write stuff down, but Miss Kita reminds them that this is for Shoko's benefit. In the manga, their normal teacher expresses disinterest in having to learn sign language by making fun of Miss Kita for not already knowing sign language. They get into a bit of a disagreement before Miyoko Sahara stands up in front of the class saying she will learn sign language, saying it is the best compromise that she learns sign language so that everyone else doesn't have to. During one of the homeroom periods, Shoko is teaching Miyoko sign language. Naoka makes fun of her for being a teacher's pet. This instantly discourages Miyoko from learning sign language, and she leaves and never comes back to class. She tells Shoko she is sorry before she leaves. In the manga, Shoya decides that Shoko is aware of the disruption she is causing during class, and she is here to ruin the status quo. The movie meets back up with the books and shows the boys and the girls writing insults towards Shoko on the chalkboard before she walks in. They feign ignorance and clean the board for her. She then writes in her notebook, "Thank you." This makes Shoya even more frustrated and thinks that it's a game to make her upset with him. This is where things get bad. The next scene of the movie is where Naoka yanks Shoko's hearing aid out of her ear. This is pretty faithful to the books, where Shoya ends up throwing them out the window. The movie cuts to a montage of Shoya repeatedly destroying Shoko's hearing aids over an indeterminate amount of time. In the manga, after he throws the first hearing aid out, he then forcefully yanks the other one, and it causes Shoko to bleed. He gets scolded by his teacher, where the teacher remarks, "I understand how you feel." This is by far the worst thing an authority figure could say to a child while scolding them for a horrendous act. Shoya feels vindicated after hearing his teacher express the same sentiment that he feels. The manga and the movie meet back up when Shoya was walking with Kazuki and Keisuke away from school. Shoya stops them. She wishes to apologize to Shoya. Shoya yanks her communication notebook from her hand and asks her what's her deal. Shoko signs, "Can you and me be friends?" With the best smile she can muster. Shoya rewards her affection by throwing her notebook in the fountain. Shoya and company start to walk off when they realize Shoko is getting into the fountain to retrieve her notebook. They look in disgust. The manga goes on for another few panels where Shoya continues to harass Shoko and destroys more hearing aids, while the movie transitions into the aftermath of Shoya's abuse and how karma can really catch up fast. The movie and the manga meet back up again when the principal walks into the class one day.
As you can see, Shoko Nishimiya is absent today. Yesterday, the school received a telephone call from Shoko's mother. In the past 5 months, 8 of Shoko's hearing aids have been broken or gone missing. Hearing aids are very expensive. Her mother believes Shoko is being bullied. If any of you have seen Shoko being harassed or abused at school, I need you to come forward and tell us who has been doing it. If no one comes forward, I'd hate to have to bring your parents into this. This is a very serious matter, and the school does not take bullying lightly.
Shoya! Stand up. We all know that it's you. I told you to stand up!
Yes, sir!
The only thing that I would like to add to this scene is that they quantify how much money in hearing aids Shoya has destroyed. It is about 1.7 million yen, or in today's market, it's slightly under 15,000 US dollars.
Now then, Naoka, you sit right next to him. What have you seen?
Well, it's kinda true. He does tease her a little. Like, he makes fun of her.
What?
And Kazuki?
Yeah, totally. I kept telling him to knock it off, but Shoya won't listen to anyone.
What? Wait! That's not fair! You were making fun of her too, Kazuki! And it's not just the boys. The girls were doing it too! I swear! It's true!
After school, Kazuki and gang throw Shoya into the fountain. This is where Shoya finds Shoko's notebook. In the manga, while walking back home, Shoya reads her notebook and reads all the hateful things that the class has written to her. Shoya's mom gets a call from the school and reprimands Shoya as soon as he gets home. They go to apologize to Miss Nishimiya and Shoko. This scene is virtually the same with the movie and in the manga. There is an added scene of Shoya being frustrated that his friends turned on him, and he is going to have to change his lifestyle now. He ends up running into Shoko under the bridge while she feeds the birds. Shoko notices him after a while, and in the manga it has a few panels of Shoya calling her a Nishi moron. This is when Miss Nishimiya appears and tells Shoko it's time to go. She looks over at Shoya in disgust and says, "What a vulgar face you have, just like your mother's." We then see Miss Nishimiya coming to collect Shoya. We now see that she has an earring torn from her ear. In the movie, we get a montage of Shoya being the new victim of bullying at his school. At this point, Shoko is still going to this elementary school. There's a lot more detail in the manga what happens after this point, so I will try to go over it as best I can. Kazuki and Keisuke lead Shoya to the roof under the guise of another daredevil stunt. They then lead him to the railing and tell him to jump off. After Shoya refuses and tries to pass it off as a joke, the boys challenge Shoya to a 2 versus 1 fight where he proceeds to get the tar beaten out of him. Shoya goes home where he washes his wounds outside in an attempt to hide them from his mom. Miss Ishida doesn't seem to notice and assumes Kazuki and Keisuke are with him and offer them cake. Shoya tries to keep up appearances that he has friends and takes the cake upstairs and acts like him and his friends are eating. Overall, it's a pretty sad scene. There's a few more pages showing the abuse Shoya is enduring and that the pain he is going through is all being channeled into his hate for Shoko. Shoya is left beaten up in an alley one day with all his school supplies on the ground. He looks up and realizes that Shoko is there and she is helping him pick up his things. Shoya slaps his things out of her hand and shoos her away. Later, in gym class, Shoko and Shoya are the only students not paired up. Shoya runs away saying he has a stomachache where he ends up running into the street just to get away from them. Several more bullying panels pass and we notice that Shoya is having his shoes stolen. When he gets home, his mom has started to notice that he has lost 8 pairs of shoes. Miss Ishida talks to Shoya's teacher about how many shoes she assumes have been stolen. Mr. Takeuchi approaches Shoya about his shoes, and Shoya tries to explain that they are being stolen by Kazuki. Mr. Takeuchi concedes that Shoya's lie may be true, but he also tells them that if Kazuki is stealing them, that he deserves it, and the bullying he is getting is the responsibility that he has to live with after what he has done to Shoko. One day, Shoya finds that Shoko is cleaning a desk in the classroom before school. He avoids being seen by her, right before he notices that Kazuki is throwing his shoes in the trash. Shoya starts a fight with him and Keisuke, where he is left bloodied on the floor. Shoya lays there, thinking about Shoko, and how this is her fault and how he thinks she hates him deep down. He suddenly feels someone cleaning his wounds and realizes it's Shoko before freaking out. Shoya repays her kindness by berating her. Shoko has had enough and slaps him across the face. The two begin fighting on the ground where Shoko yells, "I'm doing the best I can." Back in the movie substitutes all of what we just went over with a scene where Shoya finds Shoko cleaning his desk, and this is where the fight happens.
Hey, what the heck is she doing? Hey, what are you doing at my desk? Don't you dare touch my stuff, you freak! There's that look again. Don't try to act all sweet and innocent! What is it? If you want to say something, then spit it out! All you do is just stand there with that stupid look on your face. Don't you ever get mad? Well, then do something! Ah! What the hell is wrong with you? I can't believe you bit me!
A month after the fight, Shoko transfers to a different school. This is when Shoya realizes that every morning, she wasn't cleaning her desk. She was cleaning off his desk. The other students were writing on his desk. Some of these messages include telling him to die, to jump off a building, realizing that we hate you, signed by the whole class, and die badly. The manga has a few panels that explore Shoya's early middle school years where Kazuki informs everyone that Shoya is a bully and to stay away from him. Everyone else abides. During these formative years, Shoya becomes an outcast and is unable to form bonds and didn't have any friends. He develops an inability to look people in the eyes. This causes an X mark to be on everyone's faces in the manga and in the movie. During these years, Shoya develops depression and has negative thoughts about his life prospects. He has decided that he wants to end his life, and before he does that, he wants to meet Shoko and apologize for all of the awful things that he has done. This is where we are caught up to the very beginning of the movie/book, where Shoya is trying to find Shoko. The first volume ends on Shoya grabbing Shoko by the hand, and they lock eyes. Well, at this point in the movie, we're about 23 minutes into the 1 hour and 45 minute long runtime. Overall, the movie is very faithful to the source material and only cuts minor character development scenes, which is my only criticism that I've seen about this movie thus far. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think the manga just helps develop how I feel about these characters. If you enjoyed part 1 of this 7-part series, please like and subscribe so you can watch the second part as soon as it drops.